like to welcome you to the Mandel Public Library. My name is Tina Mara, and very soon I will be the longest serving staff member here. Actually, my tenure, I'm sorry to talk about myself, but I couldn't help noticing the dates because they're very similar. So I've been here 30 years, so not quite. But we're here to talk about Rick Gonzalez. He is a member of the AIA, I believe that's the American Institute of Architects.
Yes.
Okay. And he's the founder of REG Architecture, which I would imagine is a familiar name to many. And he founded it with his father in 1988, and it's in downtown West Palm Beach, which is the best place in the world, right?
Yes.
So he has 2 architectural degrees. One is from the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C., and he has studied design in Guatemala, Costa Rica, Colombia, and Italy. And I'm pretty jealous of that. He is currently on the board of the Florida Historical Commission. He's a past president of the Florida Trust for Historical Preservation and is actively involved with many community organizations. And I know that to be true. I'll agree. He served on the board of trustees of the Maryland Institute College of Art and the Preservation Architectural Advisory Boards of the University of Florida, Go Gators, and Catholic University of America. His association with high-profile projects like Donald Trump's Club at Mar-a-Lago, West Palm Beach, Jupiter, and Doral, the historic 1916 Palm Beach County Courthouse, the Harriet Hemmel Theater at City Place, Marriott Hotel and Resort, Singer Island, and the Lake Worth Beach Casino, has led the firm to numerous awards for architecture, historic preservation, and planning. And I think we're so lucky to have him speaking here tonight. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here. It's a little bit cold for us Floridians, you know, and it was nice. I was walking over here, and I was like, I hope people show up because it's a great show. It's a little bit of, it's like my walking tours. It's a little bit of history. It's a little bit of storytelling, things, people that I've run into working in this great town that I call home. Very, very fortunate. Like Robbie Mayo, like our librarian, you know, there are a couple of us that have been here for 30 years, and there are some in the audience that have been here for 40, 50 years, or their businesses, like Anderson Carr, they've been here for almost 90 years and so forth. So it's been a journey, and I'm hoping it's still got another good run, hopefully another 20 or 30 years. Not going anywhere. I sold my house last year in Juneau Beach, and I moved to a really nice condo overlooking the lake in West Palm, in downtown. So I can walk to work on a day like this, 10 blocks, or I can, you know, ride the trolley or a Palm Beach free ride or get one of Juan's bicycle. There's just so many things, so many ways to get around our downtown. And it's really interesting because back in '85, I lived in what I call the ghetto section of Palm Beach, a little small area by the Publix, the church, Bradley's, all this little area where a lot of young urbanites, I came from Washington, D.C., and other people that would show up here, we kind of fell in love with this amazing grid over here, but there really wasn't any place where you could safely live over here in West Palm. So we lived over there, go to the beach, but we used to love to come downtown, hang out downtown, go to the Cafe des Artistes, Banana Go-Go, Robbie's places, you know, and hang out in our beautiful downtown. And I think it's getting really better and better. And the story of downtown is so vast. There's so much more that can be done. The city has been around now for over 100 years, founded in 1894. There's still a lot of different ways to build in the city and hopefully to get the city in a better situation and also to get around. Mobility, you know, I'm excited that the city, the DDA has been planning and working with a consultant for getting mobility issues resolved better in downtown. But you know what? We are very, very far ahead compared to other cities to the south of us in many ways. We're a lot farther ahead than Miami and Fort Lauderdale. We respect our history here. If you go down to Fort Lauderdale, Miami, I grew up in Miami. It's not the same. You go down to Brickell and you're like completely overwhelmed. This is Shanghai, or what happened to Miami. You go to Fort Lauderdale, there's just maybe the Strand House and a couple of other historic buildings, but it also has been developed in a very large way. And transportation issues have not been resolved in those cities. You know, they're working on it, but I think we're ahead of it. I think we really are an example. And I'll show you a couple of slides of some very important things I think are going to happen very, very soon. The fact that we have Tri-Rail and Brightline, major stations 3 blocks apart from each other. And if you were in the Northeast, you know, that would be an incredible opportunity for living, working, communicating, and transportation. And we have that. None of the other cities have that. They just agreed to extend the Tri-Rail down to Miami's Brightline station, but we really have it going here in downtown West Palm. And eventually, when it connects to Orlando, it'll be even a more stronger relationship. So hopefully we can give this lecture 5-10 years from now and point out some things. And also, if there are some questions, you know, stop me along the way. We have an hour and a half to go over this journey. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me about them. I'm going to dim the lights so you can see the slide better. Is that better? Is that better? Okay. So, you know what? I wanted to ask, how many people live in West Palm Beach? Raise your hand. You said, okay, a lot of you live in West Palm Beach. And how many of you are from out of town, maybe visiting, you just happen to see this somewhere online and you decided to come in? All right, great. So it's about a 95% locals. That's really great. When I do the walking tours, it's the other way around. It's like about 5% locals and 95% visitors. So this is great. This is really good. It's important to get local information out to local people. Anyways, the city was founded in 1894. I think you all know by now that Henry Flagler, the icon that discovered the east coast of Florida, competing against Henry Plant, the icon on the west coast of Florida, both of them using rail lines to get down here as quickly as possible to develop our state when it was a wild wilderness. And the story goes that this was really a community around the lake. This is a map, a 1914 map. I've talked to John Blade and I've talked to Harvey Warrior. John used to run the Flagler Museum, and Harvey's a local historian, and they would both tell me that it wasn't Palm Beach and West Palm Beach back then. It was a community around the lake. And I'm going to show you an aerial rendering from 1916 in a moment or two that shows you that the inlet cut, the inlet that's now up in Singer Island, was a lot closer. It was actually down by where the country club, the golf course is the country club. So it was really a really tight community, and so people would fish, work, and do all the things they needed to do around both sides of the lake. There were also lagoons and inlets. You see this portion, if you live in Palm Beach, you were underwater. I would have looked here before I bought a house over there, you know, just to see what was built on it. And if you were west of the Dreyfus School of the Arts, that was considered the boonies back then. So, all right, so where I lived, which is by the railroad track by the Marriott right there in Montecito, I was in the boonies of downtown, 10 blocks away. And it actually did not exist back then, too. So it's amazing how the area has really grown, that it started that way. And that there was a very light transportation grid communication between the coast and the other coast. People forget that Palm Beach County has 2 coasts. This coast and the other one being Lake Okeechobee, the east side of Lake Okeechobee. So if you go and look at photography, by the way, we have a great historical society here in West Palm Beach and a great museum where you can go do research and go look at photography of our history. And you'll see places like Pahokee and Belle Glade and Canal Point, and you'll see buildings from 100 years, 80, 90 years ago, and you won't see any of those old type buildings between that location and West Palm. Green Acres didn't exist, the Wellington didn't exist, Royal Palm didn't exist until the 50s and 60s, so it's amazing to see both those coastal areas were part of this thriving wilderness that we call West Palm Beach and Palm Beach County. Nolan then took the plan. The original plan that Flagler laid out was alphabetically ordered, and we now know that it has the names of trees, right? We have, for example, narcissus, and we have olive and quadrille, and we have banyan, and we have clematis. So from B down to, I think it's H, which is hibiscus, and iris down to the south. North-south, and from the east side, from narcissus to rosemary to tamarind avenue. I think Tamarind was somewhere around here, this location was there. So Nolan was a very famous planner from the 1920s. If you're familiar with the new urbanist movement of the 1980s, it is inspired by Nolan, by his planning efforts of the 1920s. And I don't have a copy, I've seen a copy, if any of you have it, there's a master plan similar to this, laid out by Nolan, and it's a wonderful plan because it shows a park, a city block park, right about here on Clematis Street, right about where 610 is located, and it never got built. 610 got built in this location. But it was a beautiful plan with a double row boulevard all the way to another boulevard over here. It showed how the city could be built, and we more or less followed the Nolan plan for about a good 60 years, 70 years. We had the Guani Pyrogenic DPZ plan under Nancy Graham's leadership in the 1990s, and then we had the Siskovich plan in 2008 under Mayor Franco's leadership as upgrades to that plan. This is a beautiful place. For example, this is a rendering just about the time that the courthouse, which we were fortunate enough to restore a couple of blocks down the street, the 1916 Palm Beach County Courthouse was restored. And this wonderful rendering shows you a bird's eye view, downtown West Palm Beach. There are the Everglades right there, right where I-95 is. This is called North Palm Beach, which is really Northwood, what we know as Northwood today. And Curry Park is right about there, Martin Luther King Memorial that my dad designed at this location is at the end of the Northwood area, right? So that more or less is that. So that's where the cut was. Can you see it there? There's a cut right there, right? That's where the natural cut to get to the ocean was in the town of Palm Beach. You can see how tight that community could have laid over itself. Lots of early development, and here we are, just 1894. You saw what the city looked like before that. Right? I mean, this is 1894, right? It could have been anywhere else western United States by about 80 years earlier. And just 10 years later, already there are buildings, 2 to 3 story buildings, the formation of the city following that flagler plan of the 1890s. And just another 10 years later, to think big. West Palm Beach and Palm Beach County thought big. When I did the walking tours and when I started them from the courthouse, I pointed the building out and I asked people to think about that. Look at the quality of that building. In a place like this wilderness, there were about maybe 5,000, 6,000 people at the turn of the century in all of this area, from Stewart to Homestead. There's over 6, I think maybe 7 million people now, right? I don't think there's any other place in the country that has grown that fast in such a short amount of time. It's really a 100-mile-long megalopolis and about 10 miles wide. It's a sliver of one city after another, all the way to Jupiter. But yet they had the vision to build something that lasts, and to build a building with the right proportions, a neoclassical design, timeless, for the ages, a building that they would hope will last 1,000 years. And it created the center of this town. And just another 10 years later, early 1920s, Clematis Street is really, really busy and really growing. Every building lot is taken and built. And, these people were very smart. The way they would build, they would not, today we put together, or we see projects where a developer will come in and put together an entire city block, or they'll put one half of a block, and then they'll go to the city commission and ask for a variance to eliminate an alley and put another half a block to do a gigantic project. If you look around the Brightline Station, you'll see some of these large new buildings coming up. I think they were much smarter back then because they were developed in smaller pieces, which allowed for small business people, local business people, like Anderson Carr, like REG Architects, to come in and buy a plot. If you could only buy a 25-foot plot, then you build a building that's 25 feet wide. If you had more money or you had more of a business, you could do 50, 75, 100, up to about 150. If you walk on Mandel Street, the larger buildings are about 150. The McCrory's, which is today Via Jardine, or the old Woolworth, which I don't know what's going in there right now. They're building another bar in the old Woolworth space. Those were the bigger ones at 150. The Kabuki is in a 25-foot wide Art Deco building, so that'll give you an idea of the scale of the buildings, of what people could do to build this. And then they would also build, not only would they buy a piece, they might buy a piece and another piece, build the first building, and then they would do one of two things. The Harris Music Loft is a really great example. That building started out as a one-story building in 1906, 1907, around there. Business was good. They started with a department store. They went up. They built another 3 floors, 4-story building. Went a lot better. They built a 5th story. Went so well, they actually put a pedestrian bridge to where the bank, P&Z, is located on the other side, to another building there. And then they finally added the top penthouse, which is the pointed portion of the building, was the last piece of that building. The Guarantee Building is another example. If you look at the Guarantee Building on Olive, the Guarantee Building, I think, was 6 or 7 stories. They added 1 floor, but they did an add-on or a lean-to. There's a smaller building, about 4 stories, next to the Banco Cantina, which is a 3-story building. So, again, really smart ways of developing buildings and also spending their money where the money needed to be spent, in the public realm, in the public spaces. And what do I mean by that? Today, we have such an effort that we spend in many cities. I do a lot of historic preservation around the state. We spend so much effort, for example, the typical CVS, the typical public shopping center, they're built for 20 years. All the money is on the front facade, and they try to spend the money on the backside because they're suburban buildings. Well, in the old days, they would spend the money on the public realm, which means the sidewalk, the front walkway that we all share, that's part of our realm, part of our living space. So the detailing, these beautiful buildings, there are exceptions like the courthouse, right? Because that was a 4-sided building. But the buildings, the money was spent on these facades and on these buildings, and people really appreciated that money was spent. And then on the back side or on the side, you'd have brick, exposed brick, maybe painted brick. Maybe sometimes they would turn the corner with a little bit of stone and stucco, and that was it. If you look at the Harvey building on Detroit Street, if you look at it even on the east side, which you think is the most important elevation because the water's over there, you'd see that the stone turns 2 feet and then it's just a simple painted stucco finish, compared to all this limestone on the front side on Detroit Street and on all this stuff. This was our library grounds, beautiful library grounds. It was a park, the Sunset Park, I think it was called, or Sunrise Park, and the building was very small, tucked in the woods, in the waterfront. The Indians would come here to trade. Great stories about this area and the Indian trade, similar to the Stranahan House in downtown Fort Lauderdale, where the Indians would come from the Everglades into the city, into the New River, and the house was oriented towards the water. Today, if you go to downtown Fort Lauderdale, you'll scratch your head and go, why is that house? Where's the front door of the house? It's because it's facing the water, which is the way we used to transport in South Florida. If you go to the Deering Estate, if you go to Vizcaya, if we had a nice boat, for example, on a nice day, we could start in West Palm Beach and start hitting all the major buildings and estates. They all would face the water. That's how people used to transport over 100 years ago. So our library was tucked away, built in the 1920s. And it overlooked the grand dam buildings, the great buildings of Palm Beach. The reason West Palm Beach was built in a way by Flagler was to provide thousands of people to come and help build the town of Palm Beach, the greatest resort in North America. And you say, well, that's a lot of people. Well, think about it this way. The breakers, after it burned down, it was rebuilt in 11 months. All right? I can't get a permit in 11 months. For a building. I met with one of my staff architects today. We're doing the old Wayne Beach High School today. And the city manager said back in November, December, oh, you'll get your permits in 2 days. Yeah. And I smiled and I said, sure we will. And it's been a month and we're still waiting for our permits, right? So, back then, you need a lot of people to build a building like that. And then you need a lot of people to come and work in the building, right? You have chefs and people cleaning the buildings and bartenders, and everybody needs to work and live somewhere. And so they lived in this part of town. Mostly there was some that lived over here, but mostly over here. And then at the beginning, there was a little ferry that they could take from the bottom of Clematis over there. And then eventually you'll see the drawing over here. Right, you'll see the rail line is brilliant, right? I mean, there's the flag line, there's a turnaround about what we call maybe 5th Street right now, more or less where the bridge is nowadays. And that rail line also had a rail that came all the way over here, turned around to the major hotel here and to the breakers over here. So like I like to say in my walking tours, you could come, you could take your train from Pittsburgh or Philadelphia, New York, come all the way down to Palm Beach. They bring everything, they set you up, and you'd be on the porch sipping lemonade while they drop everything off, and your room will be ready for 3 months. And then think about that. After that, you'd be tired, you'd be bored, and you'd be like, honey, let's go to Cuba. And so you get back on the train, and you take it all the way down. There's a wonderful map of Flagler's train all the way down to Key West, and then the spur, the ferry spur, all the way to Havana, and then you could spend another 3 months going east, west, in Cuba. Boy, I would have loved to have lived in that time. I could take a train through my native country. I think it would have been a lot of fun. But the grid was, the rail was very well laid out. And you know the spur over here at this location too. Now, we all know, right? We all know about the boom, the bust, right? The 1929 bust. Every city suffered with that. What you don't know is that West Palm Beach and Palm Beach County got hit a double knockout punch. We had a hurricane in 1928, basically leveled the city. I don't have a picture. There's a wonderful picture of the courthouse. People sleeping in the pews. The old Boyd Beach High School, the one we're renovating right now, the 1/3 of the front of that building obliterated, completely gone. 2,000 people died around the Lake of Okeechobee. I've been told that's the equivalent of 250,000 people dying in an event today. So think about the magnitude. That really took out a lot of people because of the flooding and the wind and all the damage that occurred in the city. But the city was booming before then. In the 1920s, they're thinking big now. They're thinking, elevators have been invented, fireproof construction with steel construction, concrete has been invented. The courthouse was built that way. The Como building, the Harriet building, all of these buildings started to be built. And even the empty lots. It's funny, Rafael Clemente, the DDA director, and I, we did a walking tour of Clematis one day about 3 years ago, Ralph?
More than that.
More than that. And I'm like, there used to be a putt-putt on Clematis Street. And he's like, what? There it is, Ralph. There's the historic putt-putt. And then even the parking, I was thinking about, there's so many different parking layouts. I think the biggest change came in 1989 when Bill Fountain and the city, and Nancy Graham was on the city commission at the time, this whole issue about one-way and two-way traffic. If you belong to Engage West Palm Beach, Aaron is here, Michael's here, you'll see all the things that happen downtown, everything is there. It's a really great tool because none of that existed 10 years ago. But two-way traffic was a big issue, even here on Clematis Street for 30 years. It finally got resolved when they did the streetscape in the late 80s and we made it two ways. But to that time, it was all one way. Even in the early 1920s and late 1910s, it was one way. You pull in your car, you back out, and you go. Almost like Ian Lockwood, a really well-known traffic engineer, would tell us we should try that more often. And people kind of get scared at that combination. That would slow things on Olive and Dixie, I think, but the county. And I'm not sure, is anybody from the county here? Okay, good. That's good. All right, good. They're not here. Anyways, I love this picture too because this is where, adjacent to the Como building, look how big they look at that archway. Can you see that archway right over there? That's a really large archway. It was like, I'm an important building, even though I'm only 50 feet wide, come into my building. I've got an arcade in the back, come shopping, and I have a shortcut to get you over to Banyan Street. So we had all these arcades. The Chase Bank, which won an award for a process that we call adaptive reuse. So instead of knocking it down and building their prototypical building, our historic preservation planner, Frederica Mittner, worked with them to keep 2/3 of their building. And then they built a little parking lot in the back. But they took the arcade and they turned it into this beautiful. It still has the glass and the ornate grill work. And it's been adaptively reused. But anyways, we used to have a whole bunch of buildings downtown. The Como building, this building, the building on Banyan, several of them on the south side of Clematis, all the way to Ventura. And the reason was that our downtown, being a larger area than, say, Palm Beach, did something similar but different to what Palm Beach did. Palm Beach is famous for the villas, right? The Meisner and all the villas, and they're open to the sky. Well, our downtown used the arcade idea. The theory being that, it's very hot, it's very humid, there was no air conditioning, or very little air conditioning in the 1920s and 30s, and it opened up development spaces, the back of house. We've had a big problem recently on how do we rent the back of these very deep buildings, 100, 130 feet deep buildings. Well, back then, that's what they did. They used the arcade as a way to stretch the dollars to be able to get a little tenant in the back, a guy that cuts the hair or somebody that sells flowers all the way in the back of the building that didn't need to pay the high rent on Clematis Street. It was a really neat way of doing business. Maybe we could do that again, and maybe we could do that in combination with 4 alley pieces. I propose that we look seriously at the alleys from City Hall from here over to 101 or 100 Clematis, which is 2 on the north side, and then the 2 on the south side, and do like a lot of cities are doing, really take those alleys, take some of the CRA money and really turn them into beautiful walking, pedestrian, brick areas with the hanging lights on the top, and then open the back of all of these buildings just for those 4 blocks, just as a prototype to get the downtown core, the historic core, alive and running on the backside of the buildings too. Another thing happened in the second cycle so we got punched by the hurricane, we got punched by the depression. My building on Clematis Street, I rent there on the 3rd floor. There are these pictures. You must go to the Historical Society. The entire intersection filled with people and their little pocketbooks trying to get into the bank. My building was the first American bank. There was no money, right? So they basically were trying to get into that building to get their money, and so we had a tough time, like a lot of other places around the country. But something happened over here too. After the war came along, and I'm not sure if you noticed or not, but a lot of soldiers came to South Florida to get trained for the war. The airport was called Morrison Field. Banco Cantina was actually called Morrison Cafeteria. That was like the place for the Army people and the people of Navy and other people that were training here to come and eat and socialize. And they would also, they also did this in Delray Beach, by the way. They had a lot of facilities on Delray. They would go and train north at the Jonathan Dickinson State Park. That was actually, and I forget the name of it, Nancy Palm was here.
Camp Murphy.
Thank you. Camp Murphy. So Camp Murphy was up there, and when my sons were younger, we'd go camping up there. You'd find the old dugouts where they would actually be practicing for years. Thousands of people came to practice there on Jupiter Island, on the beaches, so they went away, they went to war, and a lot of them said, hey, that was a really nice little town, that little downtown in West Palm Beach. Why don't we go back, So just like in that first boom, where people would get off the train and they can come to Clematis, 3 blocks from Ventura Street, and rent an apartment, get a job, and get set up in less than a day or 2. They came back in droves, and they came to West Palm, and they started the second boom for West Palm Beach, and the neighborhood started to grow to the north and to the south. The North Palm Beach area became Northwood, and to the south, El Cid, Flamingo Park, which had gone to the 20s. You could see that growth. There's a neighborhood on Southern Boulevard on I-95. There's a historic neighborhood there. Jim, do you know the name of it? No? El Vedado, thank you. El Vedado is on the National Register. We had got it approved, but it was a great case study because El Vedado is one of the few neighborhoods that has 1920 homes and then a whole bunch of 1940s, 1950s homes. And that's very rare. Usually you get a complete historic district that is just of one period, or maybe, a little bit of another one, but not like half and half. So check out El Vedado sometime. It has those 2 booms in one neighborhood. It's very unique in Florida to see that. And we have that here in West Palm. Okay, so what happens next is, take my jacket because it's getting warm, is what happens in a lot of downtowns in Florida. And around the country, right? We're always Americans, our love affair with the automobile. We're always experimenting, always looking for the next frontier. Right? The Jetsons were ready to fly, so our library is about to take off, right? And it was a nice library. I remember when I got here in 1985, it had this walkway right over here, Chattahoochee Stone. And God help you if you walk to that library anytime between May and November. All right? It was like the scorching sun death rays were on top of it. By the time you got to the front door of the library, you were like, where's the water fountain? It was that, it's inconceivable that someone, would build these modern buildings are beautiful. They've tried building them in Brasilia too, but, it's for the climate. It's just doesn't work that well. And although it had a great elevation and a fantastic view of the Intercoastal, it was a high space. It had a basement that would get flooded all the time. And it did something. I'm going to back up again to show you. What's at the end of Clematis Street in this picture?
Trees.
Trees, right? Lush, you kind of like, there's landscaping, there's something. What's at the end of this view? Trees. What's at the end of this view? Trees. It's open. What happened all of a sudden, right? Bill Fountain used to call it, we plugged Clematis Street. We put a cork in the bottle and just kind of plugged it. No one from Flagler knew there was Clematis, and nobody from Clematis knew that there was a waterfront. We have great topography. When I do the walking tour, we come up to Clematis, and I look both ways. I go look to the west, and there's actually a hill. It's like about 10, 15, it's a height. You know, good when I get over, you're laughing, but I'm from Miami, that's a lot wanted, you know? And by the time you get to City Place, it's 47 feet above sea level. That's a really big height over there. And then it drops down to 7 feet on Flagler Drive. So we have a lot of topography, unlike Miami, unlike Fort Lauderdale and other places. It gives us character and opportunity. And so this blockage, and the fact that everybody took off, right, in the 60s, everybody was urban decay, late 50s, 60s, cities, a horrible highway program that was installed across our country that ruined such beautiful places like Baltimore and Boston and also many cities across the country that were damaged. We were very lucky that we had the lake to the west. Clear Lake was our buffer. Look how tight the highway hugs Clear Lake, right, on the west side. We were very lucky we had those two lakes because otherwise they would have done to us what happened to Miami, which was bisecting downtown Miami. Believe it or not, there's some beautiful buildings. I encourage you to go look at the west side of Miami. There's the old temple in that location. There's a riverfront park. There's a lot of the heritage of downtown Miami is bisected by I-95 on the west side of it. In our case, in the 60s, so we did that, right? It was an attempt to do that. And talking to Bill back in the 80s, I said, well, what did they do here? Well, somebody thought, you know, hey, let's do like Miami Beach. Miami Beach has the pink sidewalks, you know, so let's do gold sidewalks. So they implemented, they painted, or they, I don't know, they poured or they painted the sidewalks. In the streets of gold was their, you know, trying to get people to move downtown. In the 80s, they had a D&D center or downtown design and decorating district. That worked for a while. Right around here in this corner, right outside in this corner, there's an intersection over here, where Ultima is, and where the DD, there used to be a big blocky building on this side where they used to use it too. So a lot of ideas, but a lot of slow attempts to get people back into downtown. There's only one reason I think that downtown survived that period, and it was a commitment first by the federal and state government to build their buildings in the late 60s. In fact, I hate to say this, but they're almost historic. They're 50 years old, you know? And even though they're prefab and the ornamentation is very weak on both of the federal and the state building, they're 50 years old. They could be analyzed for that. And then soon thereafter, the county had done the wraparound on the courthouse in the late 60s, early 70s, the big blob. And they committed the funds to build the county office building in the late 70s. And the city, believe it or not, the building that's almost done over here, the old city hall was built in the late 70s too. You know, that's only 40 some years ago. And then the new courthouse is where in the 80s where they really put the push into staying downtown. And why is that important? Well, because there was nobody else to shop downtown in the 60s and 70s and 80s. But there were fewer people than before. So all the jurors, all the lawyers, you know, anybody working in the court system, they'd have to go eat lunch, or they'd have to go to Woolworth and buy something. They could do that, and it was like the lifeline for Clematis Street over here. Right? These little districts, and I gotta say thank you to Palm Beach County and the city. Over in Mount Club Road, the county bought a lot of land. They were going to shut everything down and move everything out west, over there by the airport. Airport, jail, county office space, everything. And that would have been, I think, the death of downtown, because a lot of these, you know, people that were coming to juries and things like that would have been gone. And so the DDA, and to the west, so it was a double whammy now, right? So that was happening downtown. People were flight from the urban areas. And then what was his name? Oh gosh. Anyways, Perini came to the city and said, I got a grand idea. I want to take Palm Beach Lakes Boulevard. That's Palm Beach Lakes Boulevard, that's Congress. Let's build, you know, kind of like an early private-public partnership. You know, let's build this wonderful auditorium over here. At one point it was called the Leaky TV. You can guess why, right? The concrete shell leaked a lot. And that's the beginnings of the old Palm Beach Mall. In the mid-80s, when I moved to town, that's where you went to the movies. They had a movie theater there. It's gone now, right? We have the outlet mall there, but that'll give you an idea. And with that, he was then able to build shopping strip centers, 60 type of strip centers here, in the south end of West Palm Beach, where the big shopping center down there by the bridge to Lake Fork, were the two areas of growth in West Palm Beach. And then, of course, lots of single-family houses, which are typical 60s and 70s development model of a master developer coming in, Perini, and building boom, boom, boom houses, and then giving them all the benefits why go downtown anymore, right? Your entertainment's over here, your shopping's over here, your supermarket's over here, and your homes are right over here around the lake. And that continued for quite a while. You know, it's very interesting to me, you drive on I-95, and you see all of these high-rises by I-95, right, on Palm Beach Lake Boulevard. All of those were planned in the 70s and late 60s, early 70s, and built in that time period. Because the idea of living in a garden setting and in a country club setting, you know, was very strong, even though that area is very, very close to our downtown. So it's quite a striking contrast, especially when you come from the north on I-95, because there's nothing north of Palm Beach Gardens, right? Everything north for hours is landscape or small buildings. So you get to see all of these high rises in that area, and then you see our downtown, and it's an interesting contrast between the two neighborhoods. So I got here in 1985, started my company in 1988. I worked for a couple of architects. I worked for one guy, and I'll never forget, I worked for one guy who I got an opportunity to do a house, a historic house, the one that's on the water at the end of Worth Avenue, the Venetian house, to renovate that. Oh, we gotta go interview for that house. And he said, no, I'm really happy doing MI homes, these little cookie cutter houses out west of Royal Palm, so I knew what I had to do, right? I had to get my experience, get my license, and then I asked my dad to join me, and in 1988, we started downtown in the Como building on the second floor, above Roxy's, when Roxy's and the old bar of Roxy's was in the downstairs area. Anyways, one of the first guys I met was Bill Fountain and Jim Mandel. Jim Mandel was a very excellent attorney here with Dunster for many, many years. He was the chairman of the DA. And Bill Fountain was the predecessor for executive directors prior to Raphael. And so they started, you know, scheming and thinking about ways of helping downtown. There was one guy, and I wish Penny was here, but George Greenberg. You know, George Greenberg, if you ever had the chance to meet George Greenberg, he was a fantastic man, always wearing his penny, you know, sucker, his little seersucker suit. He was the first guy to renovate his facade in the 1980s. He had a parking lot attendant. In thick and thin, he always kept his little store, the linen store, open. Now, Alan, the grandson, and Penny run the store on Clematis Street. But that kind of retail is gone, you know, and hopefully some of that may come back in smaller pieces. And so the 80s brought a lot, the first act of redevelopment to downtown, starting with the streetscape in 89. Nancy was a city commissioner back then. Bill worked with the city, and we got a bond approved. This was crazy. I mean, it was like a bond. You've seen pictures of Syria and Beirut, right? Not the buildings, but the street was completely open. It's like heart surgery, all new piping. I'll never forget seeing it then, and also seeing it 10 years later at City Place when they took out 100-year-old pipes to put in all new pipes for City Place. Because you got to get all the guts out, right? You got to put all the new guts in to make the city work, and that's what happened on Clematis Street. And you know what? It was known for two or three very important things in planning in Florida and around the country. One, the idea of the bulbouts, or the mid-block cross-section. The 4 trees, shade trees with benches and a crosswalk tightening the street, make you feel very comfortable. Even today, I think you can, you know, right, Jim, you gotta just look at a driver who's coming too fast, but you can kind of balance it out. I heard someone tell me just recently, don't do that in Rome. Don't look at the drivers in Rome because they think they have the right of way. So I'm not sure if that's a true story or not. So in West Palm, you look at the driver so they'll slow down so you can cross the bulb out. So the bulb house was a design, a new cutting-edge feature. The streetscape itself, the cast stone, it's 35 years old, folks. It's lasted quite a bit. You know, it hasn't been ripped down and replaced like in a lot of other places. There's some settlement and some pieces missing here and there, but it's held up pretty well. And then the anchor at the end of the street, the fountain, I'll show you a picture of that, but the interactive fountain. Those 3 elements really brought Clematis Street in the late 80s together. And with that, both public, right, the public investments, the new courthouse that just opened in the mid-80s, late 80s, the streetscape, and then private development. Phillips Point, Esperante, these were 2 award-winning mixed-use office, retail buildings, developments on the waterfront, off our waterfront on Flyway Drive. At the time, they were pretty innovative buildings. They still are very beautiful. They've both gone through remodeling, but they've kept the essence of their buildings. They will be historic someday down the road. And then the second act was a change of government. We had a government here, to give you a couple of examples. I remember the first restaurateur, it was called Gator Alley or something like that, down that where on the corner of Clematis and Narcissus. Where I forget the name of the restaurant there, but
Mediterranean?
in that corner,
Yeah.
corner back in there. So this lady, I forget her name, this is 25, 30 years ago, wanted to open up a sidewalk cafe. They do sidewalk cafes everywhere in the world, right? So we go to the city and they say, no, you can't do sidewalk cafes. It's against the law here in West Palm Beach.
Can't hear you.
Okay, they say, well, we can't do sidewalk cafes in West Palm Beach. It's against the code in West Palm Beach. And so we said, all right, we'll go to the city manager. We get an appointment. Ron Schuder was the city manager back then, old school engineer kind of guy by the book. And he looks at me in the face and says, we can't allow you to go to the sidewalk cafe. And I say, why? He goes, well, because a car is going to be coming down the street, they're going to jump the curb, and they're going to kill the people eating dinner, and then they're going to go after our $5 million insurance policy that the city carries. And we looked at that and we said, oh, this is not good, right? This is really bad. And there were several. There were a couple of other cafes in Daytura Street, a couple on the 300 block. And then it really changed when Nancy got elected. You know, we changed the government from, that was a strong city manager format to a strong mayor format. And it's still up to determine what's better, which method is better. I think the strong mayor format is better. It gives you one person, the buck ends with that one person. Before, you had to go to all 5 city commissioners and the mayor and the city manager to get a decision on anything, you know, because of the strong city manager format. Now you had, and we were lucky that not only did we change the form of government, but we actually got a strong mayor. The first mayor was Nancy, and she was a strong mayor. She was here to get things done. When she was a city commissioner in the late 80s, I remember meeting her at her law firm. She worked at Forum Place in a law firm. She's an environmental lawyer. And she tells me, I'm building a library. I go, library? He goes, yes, I'm getting books on urban design. I want to learn everything I can about urban design practices, you know, so I can be a better city commissioner, so, you know, I can get things, you know, I understand planning, understand design. For many years, she was involved with the Mayor's Design Institute around the country, providing a lot of good input on that. And I think that helped in making arguments. One of the things we did, Bill asked us to do renderings. We did about this. My dad is a renderer in the office. And we did about 4 or 5 of these renderings to help Bill and Nancy pitch it to the bond company up in New York so that they could go and tear down the front of the library and tear down the Holiday Inn Hotel and build a new amphitheater and build a fountain in front of the library. And with those renderings and the paperwork and and Nancy willing to go up there, she got the bond in 1992. And I think this is a very good example for other cities. I think it's very important that governments reinvest in their cities first. And once you do that, developers either from out of town or the smart developers from in town and the small developers will move in and they'll jump in because they'll see that the benefits are there. So think about those alleys. If we take the next bold step to redo those alleys, maybe people will come in and buy and fix these inconvenient back-of-house buildings to create a second turnaround like the one that occurred back then. And we had lots of planning meetings. We actually had, I volunteered a design, several designs for the waterfront. The one that you see now is not the first one. There's been like 3 or 4 designs. With Joel Daves, who was the second strong mayor, we went to Sarasota, we went to Charleston to look at ways to use the water, create a beachhead like they have in Charleston, for example, and in Sarasota, a way to really get to the water so that you can park a kayak, or if you want to put your feet in the water, you know, you could do that. You know, lots of little things that weren't implemented, but that can still be implemented. And the fountain, you know, was a really great honor to work with Dan Kiley. He was at the time, 90-year-old landscape architect, very famous from Boston. He came down, and we were the local architect working with him and developing the fountain in 1994. And a lot of this work was done very quickly because it was a design build with Burkhardt Construction. And Vince is a great builder. We had to get it done. We started in January, and it had to get done by, I think it was September or October for the centennial of the city. And it got done. And then, of course, there were big parties and things like that, you know. But it was a great space. It immediately became a place where people would come. My oldest children were 1 and 2 at the time. I used to love bringing them in their little bathing suits, just sticking them in there and watching them get soaked by the water. And sometimes I jump in there with them. It was very hot. Remember, this is the scorching walkway, right? The scorching walkway to the old library. Now, as the water water relief before you hit the scorching, however. But the end patio was not only about water, it was about landscaping too. So the idea of the triangulation of the fountain continued to express itself through the landscaping, through the streetscape. And now today, when you go to the Green Market, isn't that great, right? And not only did he do that design, but he grabbed that topography and he embraced it, right, with the stepping down effect and the little bulb out for the stage. You know, really handling that site very well. Drive on Flatiron at night and look back west. And it's one of the most beautiful views I've ever seen. We have enough to compete here with any other city around the world. It's a beautiful view, especially around sunset or something. It's just gorgeous to look at it from the backside now. And this was before we bought the library. This was in the 1990s, so we had to decorate the building. And that's what we did. We tinted the windows and added some paint, knowing that eventually it would leave. But the amphitheater was built and it's been used heavily ever since then. So the centennial year came, 1994. Nancy's on a roll, and she says, I'm going to go get the best urban planners in the world for urban planning. They happen to be down in Miami. Andres Doani and Elizabeth Gonzalez, DPZ. They created a town of Seaside on the Panhandle up in North Florida. That was their claim to fame. And they were about new urbanism in green fields, but they also intervened in old districts, in old cities that needed to be reinvented. And they came up with a wonderful master plan for our downtown. Lessons learned from that master plan at this point, I would say, probably the biggest lesson learned is that, and nothing against developers, they're very important people. They help build cities, they help make places. They're also very smart. And so, where the master plan looked at our history, remember that history I told you about developing 50 foot, 75, 150 foot? There's an axonometric drawing, a 3D drawing of that master plan designed in that route. We're building smaller buildings. So the theory of the downtown was going to build similar to its past did not occur. Unfortunately, what occurred is mass developers came in and started to buy parcels of land, half a block, one block, then the other side of the block, and assemble it to build bigger buildings that all look like bigger buildings, right? You don't have the small relationship. Why do we like Clement Street so much? Because it's eclectic, right? It's variety, it's protected now, you know, and that idea didn't occur because it's too expensive to build that way. It's easier to buy a whole city lot and build a whole city lot. But the 1990s brought us some really neat projects. You know, we took the Galleria building for Ralph Fishman and renovated it for him. The Harris Music Loft, this was all covered in aluminum, the same thing in 222. Clematis where the Starbucks is. All of these buildings were either stucco or aluminum, like the courthouse, and we took it off. And if you walk closely, you'll see on 222 in particular, the original glass from the 1890s at this location on the upper floor. The same thing on the second, third floor, and up on the Harris Music Loft. And there's George Greenberg with this little renovated building on that block. And I really enjoyed working on those projects in the 90s. It was great because they were small projects, one at a time, a small scale, introducing new uses back into our downtown that we really didn't have. It was the first blossoming of Clement Street before City Place and everything else happened. And then just 2 short, sweet years later, and this would be a lecture all in itself, the history of the uptown-downtown parcel where City Place is built today, basically a very large urban neighborhood, much neglect. This is the old baseball field. There's a school, it was the Palm Beach High School, and the church, there's a church with the back addition, and then this neglected neighborhood on the north and south side. There's Trump, and there's a neighborhood after the demolition, and so there was a development competition, and again, Nancy Graham showed her leadership. She said, I don't care what you all do, 14 teams came from around the world, from Canada, from Europe, England, North America. You have to keep the church building, and you have to find a way to reuse it in your master plan. Other than that, go to town, make a presentation, and show them what you can do. And this is what happened. You know, I'm not sure there's anybody here from City Place, but you know, some people say, you know, it hasn't done well. It's got this and that problem. It was an amazing, ambitious project, and it's done really well for what it's. It's a national example, international. You go down to Colombia and they say, hey, you live in that City Place. Yeah, we did the historic building around it, and they want to know about this project. It's a very well-known project, and the winners, Himmel and Mr. Ross. And the other one, George Perez, and the other gentleman from Michael from New York, the four partners, they hired a team with Lynn Harris, a wonderful local attorney who passed away, and Lynn put these charrettes together. I was on another team. I was on the winning team, the Heinz team, which is Heinz and the owner of the malls. I forget the name of the company, but very large national developer. They came in with a master plan, which was one basically urban mall, like they had just finished in Indianapolis. They were just, and God help us, they were going to tie the old church with like a tunnel on one side, and I was like, I really don't want to do that, you know, why do we have to connect everything, you know? Thinking in terms of the weather, I think, up north, right, where in Indianapolis, everything had to be connected. And luckily, that team did not win. The other team, the related one, I was fortunate to meet them and get the opportunity to do the Harriet, the urban redevelopment of that. But what was important about that team, and there were other great teams, Lloyd Ecclestone teamed up with the owner of Phillips Point, and they had a vision that went from Okeechobee all the way to Clement Street. So imagine taking Nolan's plan that was east and west, and they turned it and made it north-south. Imagine like the Washington Mall, for example, right? The Washington Mall, and then with a whole bunch of buildings stacked. Very, very ambitious too. A lot of big dreams. So this was the winning team, and the competition of the master plan is that it expressed itself around this historic building, number one. It respected the street grid system of the city. Yes, they had to close a couple of streets to make their performer work. You know, the side smaller streets, but Hibiscus, you know, and Rosemary became a way to link that part of the city to the east side, to the west, to the School of the Arts, the Brighton School of the Arts, and even to the north, to Rosemary, where all the new excitement is happening now and in the future, setting itself up for other development opportunities. And when the convention center came in by the county, which by the way was redesigned by Howard Elkins, he actually redesigned this facade. I got a call from the county commissioner. I did not work on this project. Another firm worked on it. They were not happy with the design. And Howard, before he passed away, he redesigned this at no cost to the county, the facades. He also designed the tower, a modern tower with a tower, so they keep some of that Mediterranean hill tower effect, but in a modern way, in a modern spin for the office tower. And then, of course, we've now added the hotel, right, which too bad they didn't add it back then, but it's here. They want to build another one, and they're building another one across the street. So pretty soon we'll be able to hold any size convention. I heard we had 3,000 people here at the beginning of January for a young students convention. And there's a Harriet at night. How a great city street, right? It's a wonderful building. But look at the other buildings. There's an old Restoration Hardware, and these are some of the other buildings. And now we have a new Restoration Hardware, which I was a little skeptical, but you know what? I haven't been inside yet. You know, maybe Brigitte will take me to dinner there for my birthday in February. You know, I'm not going to buy any furniture in there yet, but I do want to go see it when I have the time. And it's not the big building that we envisioned in the Duani master plan, a big building, but there's room for a big building on the 10th side behind it. So it kind of feels good. It's slowing the traffic. No one's getting killed. Ballet seems to be working and all that. And it's the next generation of building, right? It's got those darker colors, but it's very symmetrical, very formal. Well, City Place, let's call this the old City Place, has character. And I don't work for City Place, but if any of you are involved with City Place, I'd ask you, almost I'd beg you, to talk to them, to reconsider taking on the old character of City Place, which was based on the original Spanish, Italian architecture of South Florida. The mayor, Nancy Graham, and the developers went to Spain, they went to Italy, they came back inspired. The plaza behind, where's the plaza? This plaza over here, behind the church, is inspired on Florence. The tower at Restoration Tower, the old Restoration Tower, is based on the pinch tower that pinches the vista of the church at Florence. It's like the same view. I was in Florence in 1999, a year before this opened. I came back home and said, oh my God, they reproduced Florence in West Palm Beach. And now they want to modernize it, right? Because everything has to be shiny metal and glass and canopies. And I've seen, it's great that they want to build a nice big building on the north side, so they have, activity zones on the north and the south side. But I'm hoping that they will look at this project. And I know 2000 is only 18 years ago, but in another 30, 32 years, it could be a historic district for West Palm Beach. It has enough, it has mistakes, and it's not a perfect setting, but none of the buildings on Clement Street were perfect either. And none of the buildings on Worth Avenue were perfect either. It is the third generation of Mediterranean revival design that's been attempted in our area. And so what a shame to just lose it because it's not the flavor of the month and get something else in a couple of years. Build a big new building, do it modern like restoration, the new restoration, however, but those 2-3 blocks of the core there, I'm hoping the message will get through to them not to take it down, but they'll think about the future of those facades. And then so all that activity was going on under the old master plan, and then the recession hits, of course. In 2007, we went from 35 employees to 7, almost 3, January 2008, and then thank God we're back up to 16 now, and it's taken 10 years. And so after Joel Bates, who brought a lot of residential development, his claim to fame was 5-story buildings were increased to 8 stories, so we got a lot of 8-story buildings in the master plan. That brought 5,000-10,000 people. That brought the downtown neighborhood authority, the DNA, all of these things that never occurred, like strollers and babies and dogs and people, needing services. We're now back in downtown for the first time since the 1940s and 1950s. So after Joel, who was pretty laid back, he was a good mayor, came Lois Franco. And I think Lois is like Nancy, but on steroids, She was, right? Yeah. And I'm very happy she's up in Washington, my old hometown, and she's not here in West Palm. She's busy up there creating havoc, but leaving West Palm Beach mostly well. Well, of course she wasn't going to hire Nancy's Dwayne Platter-Zyber. In fact, they didn't bid on the job because they knew they weren't going to get the job. It would have been the natural because they did the master plan. So she went with a different flavor of urbanism, a guy that does, he calls it real urbanism. His name is Siskovich. They're part of the team building the train station downtown. And so Siskovich came up with a new master plan, which is pretty good, but the economy fell. So for 10 years, we haven't seen nothing until now, the last 2 years when we've seen a lot of development. So basically, it highlights certain areas that we're on the work, the transit-oriented development over here, the government area over here, the new city center, this building, the city hall, the waterfront, and for once, I'll give a lot of credit to Lois and her team as we did not get this the first time around in 1994. We wanted a conservation or a preservation zone for Clement Street, and it wasn't. It was not protected. You could have come in here in 1997 and submit a permit and demolish half of Clement Street. And so in the 2008 plan, we got her various cities to call it a conservation plan instead of a preservation plan. More or less the same. You have to keep the proportion of the building, and then you can build setback, quite a distance back, and then you go up 5 stories. There have been some exceptions to the plan, but nothing's been built yet, so we'll see how that plan works. And then, of course, introducing City Place into the downtown core area. It's a wonderful distance, by the way. It's really 10 blocks by about 8 blocks. You can say 10 by 12 blocks from Okeechobee to the North Bridge. Very walkable in any other city. If we had more shade, more trees, more arcades, we could walk it all day long. Quadrille is a disaster today. If someone died there this past year, It's been a disaster since the day it opened because they value engineered it out. They just stripped it down to the road, a 4-lane highway in the middle of our downtown. They called it Dixie Highway or US 1, right? And then they did the connection over there on Okeechobee and then back down to Dixie. So that needs to change. They need to bring back a lot of landscaping and pinch it and make it really difficult to drive. And people go even slower than they are because more people are going to die if they don't see that. And then we do have a wonderful park. I live over here now. There's a park called Howard Park. It's so beautiful. It's the lungs of West Palm Beach. If you're new to West Palm and you haven't gone to Howard Park, it's a great place to go. It's just like living up north on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon. You'll have a picnic, you play tennis, basketball. There's an art museum, the Armory at the bottom of there's 2 historic districts right next to it. It's a great park. And I don't think a lot of people know that we have a really nice urban park just on the edge of our downtown. Mm-hmm. And the other big change is we have a warehouse district like Wynwood in Miami that's starting to evolve. Really cool. I don't know the name of it. Anybody? Warehouse district. Okay, warehouse district. That's what it is. All right? And there's a lot of cool things happening there. And it's very walkable too. Again, we still have Okeechobee Boulevard. We haven't figured out how to deal with crossing that. But I'm sure we'll come to a point for that too. And then this rebirth, the beauty about the rebirth of the city place rebirth and the changing economy is that not only new projects, new government projects like the new city hall with the library. Thankfully, the library got the photographic center and the Dunkin' Donuts and a lot of public uses on the ground floor. One of Raphael's predecessors was hired for recommending those uses. I made the mistake of giving him the Harriet as an example, right, Ralph, for a PowerPoint presentation to the commission. And the example was the St. Augustine City Hall, which is a beautiful historic building, but none of the City Hall elements occur on the first floor. All the first floor is retail, wedding, and all the other things, the offices above. And I gave him the Harriet City Place, where we introduced shops under the bottom of the church, right, when we did the renovation. And he used that in his PowerPoint, and they fired him because they, no, we're going to build a library here, and it's going to be a library. Even though it was in the middle of our retail street, our Clematis Street. But we did get the photographic center to open in this beautiful library. It's a great library. I mean, there's cool things going on right now. Right? I mean, and a lecture. I mean, I think it's great. We came here for some cumbia salsa classes too, so you learn just about everything in this library. It's a great, great facility. People miss it being on the water. You just go up to that top floor one day in the afternoon when the sun's hitting towards the east, and you have even a better view of our waterfront from the new library. And Clematis Street, 2014, you all remember, right? What did Donald Trump say? The hottest street in America or something like that, right? And there was a design competition, an urban design competition. All the streets, major urban streets between West Palm and Miami, and Clematis was at the top three. Spanish Way, Miami Beach was number 1. I think Calle Ocho was number 2, and Clematis Street was number 3, something like that. So we've got a lot of good feelings now. West Clematis is really stable. It needs more retail, smaller shops. We have our government investment. The courthouse is about a center of gravity for historic preservation of Palm Beach County, and also anchoring that government district too in a very nice way. And all of these urban buildings, I'm sure a lot of you live in these buildings, and that you can walk to this lecture, go have dinner later, and enjoy our downtown when you couldn't do that 30 years ago. And there's been a lot of talk about our waterfront, our shore, right? It's still not a shore, but hopefully it will become a shore. And whether it's 2 lanes or 4 lanes, we'll see what happens. I'm glad I don't have to decide that. and I love how City plays like that big hurricane that came into town, and how hurricanes have little tornado spin-offs, right? Well, that's what happened, And what's beautiful about our downtown, unlike other downtowns, is we got big and small tornadoes, and some of them were historic. Our building, we were able to move into our building. We've been empty for 14 years. We did a couple of smaller buildings for Bill Bone, our local lawyer, a local small bank, and big buildings were built too. Thanks to this, I know this is a tall building, some people don't like it, but those 5 floors allowed St. Anne's Parish to do a transfer of development rights to preserve their site, keep the school there, build a gymnasium, build a garage, and put in a program to have low-income children go to school there. They got $2 million trade for development rights. And that's a win-win. We don't have that program of development rights is not that good anymore because now everything's available by the city instead of keeping it just to historic buildings. We have, I think, 13 churches in downtown West Palm. All of them beautiful, all of them historic. Hopefully the program will come back and focus to for those uses so that they can preserve their churches and then allow developers in the right locations to put some of the other buildings. And then this slide, I'm almost done. This is that connection I was telling you about. There is Cairo, and let's see, over here is Brightline, and that's 3 blocks, right? There's supposed to be another street coming in here. You see Zapadilla over here? Zapadilla stops at Banyan, and a lot of the proposals, both in the original master plan and the 2008 master plan, talked about bringing that street down to the drivers. And for God's sake, someone please put a street, even a pedestrian walkway, so that people like myself that live on the west side of downtown don't feel like we live in Timbuktu. We can get to the east side of downtown in a safe manner. Even a small route, maybe you can pull some strings or kid. I know you do a lot of rail services, so maybe you can get that.
Rick, that's ready to go?
That's ready to go?
But your friends at the county are fighting.
See, man. So the county needs to do a couple of things, right? Help us with that, help us with two-way the other streets in downtown. and get the new courthouse to slide 20 feet to the north so it aligns perfectly with the historic courthouse. Those are the three. I'll drop that one and they give us the other two. And then, of course, it looks pretty close. I mean, usually renderings, that's another thing, right? You think it's bad here? I went down to Miami with Dave Ancona, a friend of mine, to go look at the Miami showcase about a month ago. Oh my God, everything was on steroids down there. I mean, the buildings are bigger, the renderings are flashier. So you've seen the kids, a lot of you might have kids or grandkids that have these new 3D visuals, right? I mean, some of you seen these new toys that came out? They have them for buildings now. So you can go and look at a building and they give you the little thing and you can look at the lobby, you can look at the swimming pool, you can look at the high rise. And it's nice, but how much of it is real? How much are we going to really get? How much of that is in the finished product? Will that ever get built? Those are questions. But what's exciting is that this connection, whether that gets built or not, whether this is as beautiful as that rendering is or not, is that pedestrians and people are going to be able to connect from one line to another, and we're going to have a system, a transit system like Washington, like Atlanta, like other cities, because we're going to have Tri-Rail, Brightline commuter, and other crossways, east and west, and right here in West Palm Beach in our downtown, it's walkable, it's connected extremely well. So 5 years from now, we'll come back and we'll talk, hopefully it'll be a great neighborhood. A lot of empty lots over here, so hopefully that'll help some of that area to fill in. And then in closing, there's a lot that can be done. There's a lot of good things that have happened. The 4th District of Appeals is about to open. They're building some nice urban design building. It's not a very nice classical building because the proportions aren't classical. They are based on classical, but they're not. But the idea is nice. At night, have you seen it at night? It's really nice. It's lit up, the steps, low risers coming up, 2 parks, one on the north side, one on the south side, hiding the retention area and parking. So that's going to be nice. It's the first building on Cameron. Cameron needs to change eventually, become a great way. This past week, horrible during Christmas, right? They got there, but that shouldn't be happening. City Place with Rosemary, a lot of exciting things are happening on the north end. We're working on the old jazz club up here for the city, for the CRA. There's a hotel that's being proposed, an A-loft over here, and another hotel. So hopefully those things will bring into the northwest neighborhood some more stability, together with the church groups and affordable housing projects and other things that are happening in that neighborhood. Exciting, the old hotel, the old city hall is a hotel, apartment building, and an urban supermarket. I don't know if Jeff Green will ever build anything, but we worked for a little while. We didn't last long, but there's our project. And then, of course, something will happen at the Christ Scientist and some of these other locations, the 10th site, the Opera site. And so you can see, that even though it's been 30 years of stop and go, like the rest of downtown, like the prior 2 or 3 years ago, there's still another leg or maybe another 2 legs that hopefully our kids and our grandkids can enjoy downtown and come and enjoy a beautiful place to play. You can do everything here now. Play, live, work. There's a university down the street. There's schools. It's a great place. And if you have any questions, let me know. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but when City Place was originally conceived, was it thought of as a part of new urbanism where you would have that mix of residential and retail? But in its actuality, it just turned out to be an excuse to build high-end retail, and other than the public supermarket, there's nothing really that creates a community that people living there could use in terms of goods and services.
Good question. Believe it or not, I was on the planning board at the time. They were going to only build 200 apartments back then. And talking to Lynn Harris, we convinced them to go up to 600 apartments, which was, back then it was like hotcakes. They were flipping them. Before they were built, they were selling from $200,000, they were selling for $400,000 or $500,000. So we got 600 units. Some of them, like the ones next to Publix, are very nice, they're very walkable. On the Sapodilla side by Dreyfus, there are also some very nice urban neighborhoods, like anywhere in Brooklyn or Baltimore, any of these mid-sized cities where you can, you feel very comfortable walking. So they got that area right. On the east side, they built a very large parking structures. Because at the time, parking, again, we're in South Florida, right? Nobody goes anywhere without a car. So they built the very large parking lots, garages facing the railroad tracks. which worked for them because it created a sort of a buffer, but it created, I think, an inconvenience to people from other parts of the city. In fact, I think that big building that's there across from City Place suffered. The retail hasn't been able to fill up across from Bill Bones building because it faces a big garage and a train station there. So, they got that. And then the idea, unfortunately, I remember touring the Boston architects. They wanted to go to Worth Avenue, and developers kept looking at Worth Avenue as the area of inspiration for Clematis. They thought they were going to do, I think, Worth Avenue 2.0, like to make it another level of development. So Hugo Boss was here, all sorts of big stores, shiny stores, the restaurants. There's some really great restaurants for family and for business. The smaller units above on Rosemary, overlooking the church. Those were supposed to be like on Clematis. All the buildings that we did in the 90s, 222, were supposed to be residential or live-work, right, where people could live, which was also illegal in 1994 with the cafes, but that you could live-work above there, the same thing at Rosemary. And again, because of noise and because of how busy things get around here at nighttime, very few people live. Mostly it's just workspace, in those two locations. So, so the market is what the market tells you. They've got the retail shops, right? They have H&M is a very affordable store. So, again, I don't work for them. They are the experts. They built one in Doral down in Miami, which is a departure from this one. It's very shiny. It's very modern, Miami modern. I haven't gone down there to see it, but maybe you should drive and go take a look at that one as an example. So they didn't get everything right, but they were extreme. Think about it. They were extreme pioneers back then. I mean, that area of town made the cover of Time magazine as one of the most dangerous places. There was a picture, I'll never forget, back in the 80s, and Grandview Heights, where some of my friends live in, was the most dangerous neighborhood in North America. Okay? Yes, where you grew up, that neighborhood where you grew up was Cracktown, USA. I think the title of the magazine said something. I wish I had a copy of it, Ralph.
Cracktown, USA.
Right, to put it in the next PowerPoint. Cracktown, USA was Grandview Heights. One of the most beautiful historic neighborhoods in West Palm Beach City. 1910, vernacular style, early Florida architecture, beautiful front porches, the big trees. That was Cracktown, USA. So that was Cracktown. Imagine what the area north of Grandview Heights, which got all demolished by Henry Ropes and Jaladino. They were the two people that, and somebody else, or lawyer, they bought that and started the demolition process to create cities. So it was a very, very ambitious project. But then they are an ambitious developer. Look what they did in New York now, right, with the yards, right? They did a huge development up there. They've been very out-of-the-box thinkers, so we'll see what they build next. I'm sure the drawings are going to be available soon. Yes, ma'am.
I recently moved to West Palm, and I have to agree with you that there are certain retail services that aren't available to people who live here. I couldn't find a place to buy a mat for my bathtub or a stopper for the sink, just to provide a hardware store, even a dollar store.
Yeah.
But my question to you is, has the city offered any incentives, perhaps even a tax abatement, to owners or tenants who would occupy those vacant commercial spaces? It's almost embarrassing to bring my friends from New York to see downtown West Palm and see so many vacancies.
Through the Downtown Development Authority and the CRA.
It's like a decline in town.
Yes, they've had several projects. They've had facade improvements at one point. Then they had interior build-outs, services for the first floor, and now I think they moved it to the second floor, upper floor as well. Is that right? So there have been those kind of things proposed. It's a very good point. Why do I have to go to Stewart 3 times this past year for a weekend to shop and dine because it's so lovely, and go to the theater and do all those nice things in downtown Stewart? Or I was working with Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council for a master plan of Hollywood, and we spent a week in downtown Hollywood, and they have it. And Delray Beach has it, and Lake Worth has it. The Clematis doesn't, right? I mean, Ralph, I don't know if you want to share something, but is it the landlords what they're charging? I know you're planning a couple of new projects. Would you like to answer?
I see a lot of familiar faces, but some new faces. I'm Rafael Connect-Hammer, Downtown Development Authority. Sure, I can, gladly. There are incentives available. The city It doesn't do tax abatement, but there are development incentives available. The challenge right now that we face in West Palm Beach is twofold. The spaces that are available on Clementa Street, many of them, if you've noticed, are very large. They're 4,000 or 5,000 square feet, some of them up to 14,000 square feet. So for a retailer to be able to take down that many square feet at what is market rate rent, they have to be a significant national tenant. With the competition we have from City Place, the Outlet Mall, strip malls to our west, very close to our west, it's hard to incentivize somebody to come and lease out a 7 or 8 or 10,000 square foot space on our main street at a higher rent. So until the market shifts, or until we can find a way to help landlords, property owners shrink those spaces to where they're in, let's say, bite-sized chunks, if you will, that's a challenge. What Rick brought up about alleyways,
Yes,
that's an idea that has been considered. Actually, there is a plan. It's not even a plan anymore. It's moving ahead where there is efforts happening right now to make the alleyways nice enough where they could actually be facade for a business. The challenge is that those are also our back of house. So how do our existing businesses like Rocco's Tacos, Lenora's, et cetera, get services back there and still have that usable space? It's a very challenging issue. This question that you brought up, and I see one of my board members over there, Cynthia, nodding her head about this, the tension between how we regulate what can be a ground floor use in downtown, meaning does it have to be retail or restaurant, which is what the code says now on Clementa Street. It has to be an active use. Or can it be a brokerage, a real estate office, a law office, etc.? Clematis evolved as a neighborhood serving street, as we just got an incredible education on about how this place evolved over time. And we had Woolworths, we had McCurry's, we had what were the department stores at the time on our main street, like we had in so many downtowns. When suburbanization happened, when disinvestment in our city happened, those very large spaces actually backfilled with nightclubs and big restaurants, which their time has passed as well. So we are in an awkward moment right now of what the market will support and what our actual infrastructure will support.
And we're lucky, we have the Halsey building, for example, Ralph, right? It's a new historic building, bought by Dave Nelson, a young guy who's got a vision, who's taking an old facade from the 60s and bringing back the 1920s facade on the street side. But on the alley side, there's a 3-story small building where he wants to do like a little jazz club, opening it up from the alley. So he might be like the first one by the end of the year, right? I think that if that happens, then maybe other building owners will look at that and say, this is really cool. Let me try to figure out how can I do something on the backside of my building. And then like Ralph says, can we get the streetscape to be done? You know, like
that's going to be an incredible project.
You know, and like the city a couple of years ago, they took those alleys and they paved them in asphalt, and somebody at engineering said, let's make the asphalt look like brick in the same reddish color. And of course that was horrible because they hadn't even finished pouring and they already were cutting it to fix a pipe or to do this. And of course the patch job that ended up with that. If you go to other cities, they'll use granite or they'll use brick because you can remove the stones, do the underground work, and then put it back in. So hopefully they'll do something.
Rick, I'd like to add one thing.
Yes.
We often compare ourselves, we all do this, to Delray or Stewart or Lake Worth or other places. If you look at the characteristics of their storefront, of their ground floor spaces, they have many more small spaces than we have. The spaces that are vacant on Clematis are predominantly very large. And that's a challenge that we have that most other downtowns do not.
That's an excellent point, and I know you want to ask another question. I want to add an example that's critical to that. We were in downtown Stewart for Christmas week. Downtown Stewart, Colorado and Osceola. Remember, Bridget? We were like, the shops and the restaurants go from one street to the other. And I looked at the aerial maps. They're not 100. They're not even, because right now what we have in our downtown is 135, right? 15-foot alley and another 135. So that's 350 feet. I'm talking about blocks that are only about 100 foot wide. that had double storefronts. So the cafe that we sat at, we were on the west side, it was a cold day, we wanted to get some sunlight. On the east side, you could have sat outside too. And so I think that helped the retailers the same thing. You know, you could come in and out from both sides, you know. A lot of airports are using that theory in terms of laying out airports are not shopping centers, right? They're not, you just happen to catch a flight on them, right? We were in Madrid in November, and the Madrid airport exactly the same layout. We're on the Madrid store. Oh, coming from this side and you're coming from the other side. All very linear, two-sided access. So we have a challenge in our downtown, and it's that these buildings, even at the alley, are 135 foot wide. And until we can come in and do these alleyways and do something innovative like what Dave's doing, you know, I think we're going to have a challenge. But it's not a big challenge. It's only 4 blocks. You know, so, you know, we can get the DDA to talk to the CRA and figure out a way to continue to do that. I think it'll be wonderful. Yes?
Thank you for doing this. It's really good. And we need to celebrate our history, not only in West Palm, but everywhere. The one thing I missed from a historic standpoint was we started a business in a group of shops on Lakeview Avenue, and they went Lakeview all the way to Flagler, and they were all Mediterranean kind of revival little buildings and shops and restaurants, and took it all away to build Phillips Point.
Right.
But I didn't see anything, you know, from a historic standpoint, I'd like to show that those things were there in the city at one time.
That's a great comment, because next Wednesday night, if you like this show, I'm giving one on the historic buildings of our downtown. Which ones they are right now. I do the walking tour, which is from the courthouse to Clematis to the fountain. That's a little L, right? Like about 5 blocks. And and I always hand out a little map. And over the years, I've done a map of all downtown, highlighting like about 20 or 30 buildings. So we're going to do a visual walking tour of the historic buildings of downtown. And someone just sent me an email with a whole bunch of pictures of all the old buildings before they were, like you said, demolished. So I'm going to also, time is limited, but I'm going to try to get some of the old buildings like your building, and, you know, some of the other buildings like, you know, the Roxy's, right? The Roxy's was right down the street from you. You know, now it's in a 3-story thing here on Clement Street. Yes, over here and then.
What's your opinion of the new CVS going in on Clement?
You know, I got a call from a reporter on that today, and on the 7-Eleven. And I'll start with the 7-Eleven.
Oh, 7-Eleven too?
7-Eleven is coming into the building that I occupy, and the DDA is going to be in the 2nd floor, and the 7-Eleven is going to come on the 1st floor. So my daughter lives in Baltimore. She's typical South Florida girl, right? Unfortunately, in a way, because she went to Dreyfus. She got a great scholarship to go to MICA up in Baltimore, and she stayed in Baltimore, right? Right? Everybody, I miss my daughter, right? So I wish she came back to visit, and she sees downtown, and she walked from Dreyfus to Clematis, and she says, "Oh my God, this place is so much better than it used to be." And her boyfriend came, and he likes they took him out on the boat, and and everything else, right? So maybe that will bribe him someone down there, right? But the CVS and going back to the 7-Eleven, there's 3 or 4 of them on Charles Street, which is the Clematis Street of Baltimore is Charles Street. They're great. I remember one time I went to visit her in October, and there was a snowstorm. Nothing was open. We went in there, we had little hat sweaters. About, where you get coffee, they have sandwiches. So I know everybody thinks of the old Slurpee 7-Eleven in the suburbs. They have a new model that they're testing, that they built in Dallas and Baltimore and other cities. So I think, it's a good use. Here's another answer to that question. Do we need another nightclub?
Yeah.
On Clematis Street. I think there's one opening up right now in the old Woolworths space. On the CVS, the lady mentioned, CVS is a great store. I mean, if I want to get my medicines now, I have to go to the Palm Beach Publix, because there's a pharmacy over there. The Publix that we have here is extremely small, right? So it's very convenient, but it's very small. So having a CVS where you can get daily things, a mattress or this or that, yes, we need that too,
Or True Value hardware store.
Exactly. Now, we have one on South Daisy too, not too far from downtown, but you're right. Those kind of uses would be great to
Practical. At least it'll be like McCrory's or
exactly. As long as we don't have a vacant space, as long as we don't have another nightclub, we have an active use that's a retail use, right? Second best is this brokerage or other things, because they're not retail, but this is a big space too. Back there.
Central City Pharmacy delivers every day to all kinds of downtown. So,
thank you.
That's what I wanted to ask.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you what your opinion is on the CRA's plan to possibly spend over $40 million on Daniel Street Garage. Early on in the presentation, you mentioned a couple of projects you thought CRA should take on. I forgot who they are right now, but they sounded good to me.
The CRA is funding the Sunset Lounge project in the Northwest neighborhood. That's the one that we're doing with the shotgun houses, turning them into artist pavilions, and with a new jazz park. So we're going to do something really, really good for the Northwest neighborhood there. I think what you're talking about is this garage over here on Bank, which is where I park, where they want to tear it down and they want to build something like, if you go down to Lincoln Road in Miami Beach, which is a pedestrian street, they hired a famous architect from Switzerland to come up with the most expensive garage ever built, with the most expensive private $10 million condominium on the rooftop with a pool and everything. Part of that, that part of that architecture of wow, we've got to do something big, showcase. And you know what? I don't know. I don't think that's a good idea. I wish I could borrow some of that money to do the 4 alleys instead, and find a way to retrofit that building, if it's retrofitable. If not, tear it down, put commercial spaces on the ground floor, because you're going to have that beautiful hotel, an apartment building, and supermarket under construction across the street. Build the parking above, because we do need parking. One thing West Palm Beach did very, very smart years ago in the 80s, they strategically built these parking garages, about 4 or 5 of them, in different parts of downtown, by the Kravis, Hibernia, Clematis, and by the police station, right? So the only mistake is that they didn't line them. They could have lined them up with little shops, the width of this, right? Just tiny little a shop. I mean, in Stewart and everywhere. In Hollywood, they got little shops that big, right? 15 by 20, 300, 400 square feet. They didn't do that. They built every parking space all the way down to the ground floor. West Palm Beach Brewery now looks at a 600-car parking garage instead of another West Palm Beach Brewery across the street, right? So do that with that money. Take that money, figure out a more reasonable project for that site, do the alleys, and go retrofit the garages downtown. That's just a suggestion. Rob?
First a comment and then a question. I think it is so valuable and important that we have people like you, Rick, as the stewards of the institutional knowledge of our city and where we've been, and that there's not just you, but I see Aaron in here, members of the Downtown Neighborhood Association, this citizen activism that is really very strong in West Palm Beach, that people love this place so much that they are ready to fight for it. And I think that that's part of what makes it such a great city to live in and what has been part of its success. And a question, you brought up such a good point because I remember so many of our conversations, you've been a great mentor to me, about the Banyan Garage and other projects, about those liner uses. What jumped out to my mind when you mentioned that, and thinking of the question that was asked earlier about where's that retail success story in our city, in our downtown area. The places that it's thriving are those small spaces like the ground floor of the Whitney, for example.
Yeah.
How can we, is that doable?
That's liner.
That's liner use.
That's very typical use. There's enough room where on the Banyan Garage, you take out one bay of parking, you go all the way to the sidewalk, that's 20 to 25 feet deep. It could be done.
And that works there. Hibernia Garage, Banyan Garage, etc.
Exactly. I mean, we're not famous. We got dinosaurs now, for Pete's sake, right? West Palm Beach is on the news, right? So we can have a dinosaur store, You might think that's funny, but when we were in the old high school in White Beach, we actually had a group of people from Broward that wanted to move a dinosaur museum in that building. So there is a pent-up demand for dino fun and dinosaurs in Palm Beach. Thank you, everybody, and